ultimately, the best that we could have achieved was the P5 with George behind the pair of Ferraris. What did we hope to achieve with Lewis starting on the hard tyre? Well, we do a lot of simulations and we look at the scenarios where we start on medium and hard. And one thing we were seeing with the hard was the potential upsides were actually bigger. So Lewis's chance of getting a very good result was increased if we offset strategy and went for that hard tyre. The other consideration with Monza though is despite those really long straights, it's actually very hard to overtake. And the reason is when you're running a very small rear wing, you trigger the DRS, there isn't a lot of drag to lose because those small wings are very, very efficient. So the DRS effect at Monza is less than half of what it is at most other circuits. And that's the principal reason that overtaking is difficult if you don't have a difference in tyre age. So Lewis's entire strategy on the hard tyre was about generating that difference in tyre age to the other cars. We were able to run him longer. He was then on a fresh medium at the end of the race when all the other cars, the McLarens, the Williams, Alonso, were on their older hard tyres. And that was enough to generate the overtaking delta that he was able to get through. There were points in the race where a safety car would have been very beneficial to Lewis. If all the medium runners had already come in and he was still out on his hard tyre, not having stopped. But ultimately, that didn't happen. And at the end of the day, the 6th place that Lewis achieved was the best possible result. Can you change your tyres if the race start is aborted? And if we could, would we have considered changing to the medium? Well, the first part of the question is, no, you can't. If it's just an aborted start, you have to keep the tyres fitted to the car. Now, race control can decide if the weather has changed or if there's a longer delay that you are allowed to do that, and they would have delayed the start and messaged the teams to let them know that they were able to change tyres. The second bit of that question, though, is would we have wanted to change? No, we wouldn't, because what we were actually trying to achieve was an offset to most of the field, to try and make sure Lewis was on a different strategy. So actually, we were quite pleased to see that the vast majority of the cars were all starting on the medium, because that was the key ingredient for his race to work. Was there any damage to Lewis's car after the incident with Oscar? No, we were quite lucky because the contact was all on the wheel rim and the tyre. So there's a little bit of damage to the rim, there's a bit of damage to the wheel cover on it, but nothing that would have affected the performance of the car. What do we take from George's performance in Monza? And without that 5-second penalty, would he have been able to challenge the Ferraris? Well, George had a really good weekend, and perhaps the highlight was the performance in qualifying. We'd had a difficult Friday. We were struggling to get the grip out of the soft, the C5 tyre, but a really good turnaround by the team going into Saturday, and to qualify on the second row was a real achievement. Fundamentally in the race though, we didn't quite have the pace, and it seems that when we go to the low downforce settings, Ferrari get more competitive, and in Monza it looked like they had 1.5 to 2.5 tenths of performance on us. Now, when you've got that kind of advantage, it's very, very difficult to challenge anyone on strategy. So ultimately, the best that we could have achieved was the P5 with George behind the pair of Ferraris. Will the Singapore track suit the car more? Well, we're certainly hoping so, but there's reason to think that the car will work better because Singapore is a maximum downforce circuit, and our performance at the high downforce tracks, if you look at Barcelona, Budapest, even Zandvoort in the race, the car was working well. We've had pretty strong performance. So we're hoping to be able to be a bit quicker there and get back to a position where we can challenge for podiums. Now, the track though does throw up some pretty unique challenges, and we've also got some layout changes for this year. So there's a sequence of 4 corners near the end of the lap. They've been removed where the track used to go underneath a grandstand through a tunnel. That's now gone, so we've got a longer straight, which will change a little bit how the tyres are working. There's a bit less energy there, but it's also an abrasive tarmac. We've got the softest 3 compounds, so it's a pretty tough race on the tyres, and it's also a bumpy street circuit, and added to that, the race is run at night. So plenty of challenges for us to try and tackle to get our heads round, but as I said, we're going there optimistic for a strong performance. What kind of pizzas did we have this weekend? Well, I gather a lot of pizza was eaten in Italy, but I was actually back in the race support room. So there are a few races a year where I'll join the team of engineers, strategists in the race support room, and it's great to get a bit of a view of how it's working back here. Now, my seat on the pit wall was taken by our own Italian engineer, Riccardo, and that's great because it gives him an opportunity to keep in touch with everything that's going on at the track. But for pizza, well, I had to make my own. I did that at home, and I'm sorry to say it was only a margherita. And the tyre that took the brunt of the impact.
Don't lie to the fans.
I can.
No.
Okay.